So, guys, welcome. Very good evening to everyone. Today, we are here with two of my very close friends uh, who are here to share what they have been through, what they've done in their entrepreneurial journey. Uh, the idea of EO Jaipur is to come every week and connect with students who are looking to go ahead and become an entrepreneur and set up their own businesses in future. Uh, EO, as a global organization, does this award called GACA, which is Global Student Entrepreneurship Award. And Jaipur has been hosting it ever since its inception. And we will be organizing this event this year as well. And the applications are open. So any student or entrepreneur who is doing a startup, who is looking to get into a startup, please join this webinar on Facebook, or also connect on our social media link on Facebook and get more information about it. Not taking too much of the time of the panelists, I'll go ahead with a quick introduction of both of them. We have Vishwas Mudgal. Uh, he is the co-founder and MD of Good Work Lab Technologies, a software company based out of Bangalore. And he also runs a Good Work Lab co-working space, which also is a startup which he started for startups. So it's quite interesting story which he'll have to share. And there are other facets of this guy. He's a avid writer, reader, and also exercises a lot and is into blogging. Very, very interesting panel we have here. The second panelist is Vivek Loda, an IITian, did an MBA, started working from probably education and tech field, rather technology and science field, entered into agri-based business where he's again doing a lot of innovation. He's a very active investors in the startup space, doing a lot of mentoring, and has been working with ecosystem in Rajasthan and also with his IIT group and other incubation centers. So guys, a very warm welcome to all of you. Uh, I would straight away, not taking too much time of you guys, would uh, take one of you to answer this very important question about student entrepreneurship. That how and what is the what do you say, one ingredient which you think is the most important ingredient for a student entrepreneur to uh, work or build on to his entrepreneurial journey? What one ingredient which you think is the most key? So, Vishwas, probably coming from your experience when you were a student, what drive passion for you to end up here today?
Yeah, awesome. So thank you so much, Abhinav. First of all, being on your show here and the stuff that you guys are doing is amazing to see that. I think this is exactly what is required in India at this point in time, and I'm glad to be a part of this. Just to give you, a couple of key things from my perspective. The most important thing that I would like to tell is that I am myself a teenage entrepreneur. I started my first company when I was 18, and it was a computer education academy called InfoVision. And it was out of the blue. I stuck with an idea that I need to bring computer education and internet connection to my hometown, which was in north of Karnataka in Gadag. So I went to my dad one day and told that I have this idea and I want to start a business. I need some money from you. I need to borrow money from you. And then he was really shocked to hear that. But anyway, he was supportive. He gave me the money and I started that business. And I was the first one to get the internet connection to my hometown. It was quite a great journey for me. I ran it for a few years. Close to about 200, 300 students were trained in those 3 years. And then because I came to RV College in Bangalore, I could not continue it further. So, but if you look at back then, what really happened is that I had this kind of itch with me that I want to do something. I want to do something. I didn't know what exactly that is, but then I looked at opportunities around me. I think one of the most critical things I think that for student entrepreneurship is an ability to understand it is okay to experiment. It is okay that your experiments might fail, so you learn from that and that you move forward. And also for somebody to help you channelize that energy and that thought process of how do we start, what needs to be there to start, and then have some kind of a seed funding or some kind of incubation that needs to be there. Unfortunately, we didn't have anything back then. This was in 1999. So nothing was there, but now there is a lot more happening. So it is great. This is what we want. Yeah, so I think these are the few things I feel that are critical for the student entrepreneurship. But if you ask me, so some of the key questions that people come and ask me is that, okay, I want to start something. How do I start it? Where do I start? Right? So that is the problem. So I always tell them that, okay, the first thing you need to do is identify a problem in the market, which you can actually address and solve it in a way that it's in your USP kind of a thing. People also ask, okay, how do I start? Like, how do we create a business plan, or how do I validate what I really have is so it's going to work? How do I raise money, or how do I scale up? So these are the few things that people are stuck during the the initial stages. So that's something that I think we need to address upon.
Yeah. So Vivek, coming to that point which Vishwas said, and again also you can share your thoughts on what is the key ingredient. But second part which I would also like you to answer is, as Vishwas said, the question which you mentor a lot of startups, you talk to a lot of startups who are just out of college and doing something new. What is the thing which they are looking for the most? Okay, money is one part, but other than that, what is the missing link there?
Hi everyone, thanks Abhinav for introducing me, and let me just quickly start from my journey to give them a perspective how students think. So during our IIT times, startup word did not exist. There was only entrepreneurship. So there was a cell called eCell, entrepreneurship cell, and I was very fascinated. IIT mein the biggest name is Mood Indigo, cultural festival hota hai, and that's the biggest thing across. But I was always fascinated with the entrepreneurship thing. So eCell ka I was very active part of, and that time business plans bante the, executive summary hoti thi, then there were 4-page business plan and a detailed business plan, jo ki now it's all PPTs and presentations and Excels. Back in those days, it used to be only business plans, and there's this business plan competition called Eureka, which had like a 1 crore prize money and everything. So I was very fascinated कि यार लोग कैसे अपने आप कुछ शुरू करके कर सकते हैं. The same thing, that same spirit now I see across all the colleges. It's not just IITs or any other engineering college. It's across any college that you go to. So as students, what is your advantage is you start up early, you fail fast, and then you can restart. I'm not saying you have to fail, but essentially, I don't know anyone who's succeeded at one go. Even the best of the companies that you talk about, they've had problems in their life. They've had to pivot their models. They've had failed at a lot of attempts. And then eventually they got success. So when you start early, you've got a lot of mileage ahead of you in terms of when you start at 20, 21, 22, you've got plethora number of years. So if you go back to the era of Dhirubhai Ambani, he started at 40, probably even later. So now that thing has come down to 20, and you've got that extra buffer of 20 years. Abhi net worth of Ritesh Agarwal and Vijay Shekhar Sharma not even reaching at 40 is billions. So it's very clear, if you start early, you've got enough on your platter in terms to fail. And this is the time to start, because if not now, it will be never. Itna supportive environment you will never be able to get. We've got fantastic support from government. We've got fantastic support from all these co-working spaces ki aapka office expense. We've got n number of incubators. And the biggest problem, what you were talking about, Abhinav, is all these startups, when they're very young and at the early stages of their life, they definitely need a lot of mentoring. नहीं तो क्या होता है, बहुत सारे इंडिया में, it's not only about your idea and execution, it's about also the compliance and the compliance related stuff. So if you're not very pally with the norms of the country, sometimes you take up your idea to the next level and you realize you are completely non-compliant to what's happening across the countries, and there are revolt all across you. So I'm taking a little extra time, but to share a very interesting story. Ola, people believe, is a hardcore copy of Uber. But if you essentially look at the company or the time when they were registered, Ola was not a copy of Uber. Ola initiated the idea themselves. And when they were executing the idea, तभी क्या हुआ, imagine in a city like Bombay, इतनी सारी trade unions, mafia, underworld, everything being there, उसके बावजूद they started from Bombay. And उनके साथ whatever you can think of in Bombay in movies happened. But these guys had guts and energy and पूरा conducive environment था, तो इनके वहाँ यूनियन वाले आ गए, इनकी छत तोड़ दी, फॉल सीलिंग तोड़ दी, इनको धमका दिया, everything and anything that you think can happen really happened with them. But they had courage. And क्योंकि ये नॉर्म्स भी फ्लाउट कर रहे थे कि ऐसा नहीं कर सकते, ग्रे एरिया था नॉर्म में, मतलब फ्लाउट नहीं कर रहे थे बट ग्रे एरिया था. सो राइट नाउ इट इज द टाइम. एंड अगर आपके पास अच्छे मेंटर हैं, अच्छे लोग हैं ना, don't leave this opportunity. And even if you're not having those mentors, get someone like Vishwas clearly mentioned, get some seed capital, get some good people on board, and then you're good to go. I mean, that's my 2 cents that I would give to startups for starting.
No, you very rightly said, and I think the important fact that we are, all three of us are taking out maybe 1 hour of our day's time and doing this itself proves that something is happening around us, which is very, very conducive for early stage startups and young entrepreneurs to take up this journey. We all understand how important it is to create jobs, and it's not one person's one guy who can create jobs for everyone. So we need more people to come into mainstream and create jobs for others, and that's practically what EO thinks. And that is why GACA is a flagship program which EO runs and wants students to sign up for this and make an impact. One interesting point, Vivek, you pointed out about co-working space, how important that is playing a role in this ecosystem, creating, you should say, lighter startups. I think they're not asset heavy in terms of even office space. And since Vishwas is in that space, I would like to understand in this COVID era and beyond this, what is the dynamics he sees and what is the journey been like, Vishwas? Can you share your thoughts on that? Yeah.
Yeah. So, see, co-working spaces have really played a huge role across the world right now. In the last few years, I think it's really matured as a whole business model itself, and it's come at the right time if you really look at it, because of the whole shared economy concept. And when I started GoodWorks co-working centers in Bangalore, the whole idea for us was to create like an engagement arm, a place where people can come and start up easily without having to put in a lot of capex and stuff like that. But very soon we realized that GoodWorks is not only being used by startups but also for large companies. And then we started getting companies like BMW and Tesco and lot of companies out there taking up managed offices. And then suddenly co-working became like a big boom. And then we were like expanding. We were touching about 6-7 centers in Bangalore. We were like the fastest growing co-working space suddenly, right, in 2019. So I think few things, right, that really work well for co-working is that first of all, you don't have a commitment when you come and you go into a co-working space. That is the most important thing, right? When you start your company, the most important thing you need to do is look at keeping your cash burn as low as possible. And not everybody has the luxury of having the funding, right? So many people are starting from their own pocket monies, or even it's in college, or it is some kind of what do you say, the salaries that are saved and stuff. So it becomes a really easy point that you can just go in for like a like 5,000, 10,000 rupees per month. You can actually start from a very high quality infrastructure that was once available only for these Fortune 500 companies. So now that kind of infrastructure, or even better than that, is available for any bootstrap company or any freelancer out there. So now there is a huge level playing field. So it also creates like this ecosystem where a freelancer or corporate guy and then your small startup or mid-sized company, all are sitting in just like one roof, which never could happen before. So we see a cross-pollination of ideas. We see a cross-pollination of many things that happen. Like an ecosystem gets created, a value system gets created, a food chain sort of a thing gets created, supply chain gets created in these co-working setups that we have seen even in our centers. So what really happens is that you don't have to give like a huge deposit. You don't have to give, because in Bangalore we have to give like 6 months to 10 months security deposit. Of course, in a lot of metros you do, but in Bangalore it's really expensive. So that really comes down drastically, because in co-working you hardly pay any security deposit. So you save that money and you can invest more on people. So you can hire the right kind of people. You have more money for R&D. You can have a more runway because you don't even have to look at operations as well. You don't have to hire a security guard. You don't have to hire somebody for housekeeping, and you don't have to get material. You don't have to go for internet connection. Huge saving. I mean, that's something that you cannot even imagine, and it converts your capex into opex. That's another aspect, which is very, very critical. So this has actually fueled the the co-working as a bandwagon that is created. So a couple of issues that some people might feel there is privacy issues. Those are things that we feel that sometimes if you're working on something really top secret and you need some privacy, so that's when you take up like a cabin and you can work. I think that also is sorted, and we feel that this concept is something that is, especially after the COVID situation, people in co-working spaces, the ecosystem has been really badly hit. Most of our centers are still very, very low. People don't want to come back to offices. They're going to the malls, they're going everywhere these days, but they're not coming back to offices because I think people are scared, and work from home has become kind of a norm right now. But I think early next year, I think people are going to come back to offices, and co-working, because of COVID, it's going to be so much more important, because people are going to take up like satellite offices for their employees. Very recent report now, the survey very clearly told that people are fed up at home. They want to just go back to offices right now. So I think co-working spaces are going to come back with vengeance. So that's going to be the future.
Yeah. That's true. Even I spoke to someone from Infosys the day before yesterday, and they were saying it's been enough now. Enough is enough now. We want to go back to the office, because those you say water cooler talks or the coffee break talks, which get more ideas built up, that doesn't happen if you're sitting in your isolation, in your okay. There is a limit to everything. Extreme of anything is bad, I think. So I think you cannot discount office space or co-working completely. It has to exist. And for student entrepreneurs who are starting their journey, I think that becomes the best place to get mentors and bounce back ideas. I think, as you rightly said, the pollination, it's for the ecosystem, it becomes the best way to get successful startups out. One interesting thing which I wanted to ask with you guys, and because it is GACA is a entrepreneurs organization flagship program, the idea here is to get students connect to successful entrepreneurs. One purpose is that, of course, they are the jury members, they're mentoring them in a way. So also there is a big opportunity that entrepreneurs might invest back in these startups if they see the idea is exciting. So just to check with you, Vivek, since you are a mentor as well as investor in many startups, how does the dual role work? Because sometimes as a mentor, you want them to think somewhere long term, but as an investor, sometimes you might want the returns quickly. It can be a very difficult situation. So how does that work for a startup? Is it a good thing or a bad thing? And then Vishwas, probably you being in Bangalore and working with a lot of startups, same question for you as well. So Vivek,
So I'll take it from where Vishwas left. So when we're talking about these co-working spaces, there is a lot of interaction happening, and all those coffee breaks that you were talking about, Abhinav. So all these startups also talk to each other. When they talk to each other, they get more and more ideas, and they're more excited to execute their own ideas, and especially take a hint or reference from some other startup that they're talking to. So what is important is that these guys need to interact. So now coming to the mentorship, I think mentorship is a key thing for any startup to work. Without mentorship, I don't think any startup can really function. So mentorship at different phases is called in a different way. There are some investors who become mentor. So SoftBank could press you to work in the direction they want to. But initially, when you have to have a clear direction, these mentors kind of help you to evaluate what is your end point, where are you trying to reach. So if this is your end point, what is the right way? So you have got three options. So let us work towards all three options and see which is the option that will actually take you to where you want to go. So I'll give you from an example, and Abhinav, you are also an investor in that company called MedDelivery. So when Asta, the founder of MedDelivery, met me, I think 3 years ago, so she wanted to replicate the model of NetMeds or Pharmacy to deliver medicines to home. But I wasn't very convinced with the idea because all these companies had a lot of fund already with them. But she thought she had got great domain knowledge and she'd got great expertise. So eventually, when we were talking, we realized there were some commonalities, and then eventually she came up with that idea. There is this big problem for this supply of tablets and medicines from pharma companies to distribute to super distributor to small distributor to stockist and then delivery boys. It's a huge mess, and there are like many stockists holding five companies, and there overlaps and everything. So when she came out with this problem, I believe that this is the real problem that she's trying to solve. And this problem you can actually solve with very little money. You don't need that huge capital or discounting model to solve this problem. This is a problem of technology, and if you can solve it through technology. So I was very convinced with the idea. When I was convinced with the idea, then our conversation started, our things started, and then there were discussions, negotiations, or to say, all those conflict between as a mentor and the investor, all these things happened. But eventually, they both have to point in the right direction. As an investor or as a mentor, in both ways, you want the company to gain. It's only when the company gains, the mentor wins or the investor wins. So we decided on that model, and eventually it proved out beautiful. The way she's running the company right now, it's fantastic. Her growth is 30% month on month. She's able to solve that problem. People are giving her 74% repeat order in a complicated industry like medicines. It's phenomenal, and she's able to build a tech which is very soft and user friendly. So when you come to mentoring, it is very important that you are able to tell her what is the right direction, or what is the right direction you should be taking it. And then as an investor, you always want them to be in that model. You cannot be in a model where you are actually profitable and then you grow. So these guys need to burn money. These guys need to solve the problem. All they want to do is, or all they have to do is ensure that they are EBITDA positive. So they're not actually giving out. So you're one guy selling samosas for 10 rupees, the other sells it for 5, the other gives it for 2 rupees, eventually one gives it for 1 rupee. That's not a sustainable model. When you come back to the cost, another guy with high funding or a Reliance would come in and then again sell it for discount. So that's not sustainable. You have to be operationally positive. And then eventually, once your growth is high, 1, 2 years, 3 years, you burn, and then you are in a great shape. I think that's where I would say mentoring is very important. And as an investor, I would take myself on a back seat, because as a mentor, I also learn a lot of things from startup. It's not only them learning from me. During the discussions or during the course of discussions, a lot of new points come out, which I'm actually able to execute in my own company also. So it's not that these guys learn from me. There is a lot of learning that happens within me, and I'm able to execute in my own company.
Very, very interestingly interesting thoughts. I think it's a valid point. You end up learning when you are mentoring also. So it's a two-way traffic. Your thoughts on that, Vishwas? How because you are talking to a lot of young guys, you're constantly in a way mentoring them. So what do you see if an investor mentoring role complexity, it becomes complex, or it is better for the startup, or what's your outlook on that?
See, mentors are really important. I think more important than that is, I believe that entrepreneurs becoming investors, right? So that breed, that class of investors is something is very, very valuable. That's what I feel, because what happens is that we entrepreneurs, we have a different view of the business. Okay, how we are very passionate about what we do. We are different beasts altogether. Okay, because the kind of risk-taking abilities. We are also led by our heart. Also, it is not just money, right? That's what drives us. That's what differentiates us than a pure breed investor. So that is what happens. So when we become successful and we start having that some amount of exits or profitability, right? And then we start investing in other startups and helping them succeed. That's a different class of investors altogether. Okay, that's one thing I feel that has happened in the last 4 or 5 years, and it is on the uptick. So that is something. It's a big boon that has happened, and many exits have happened, starting with the Flipkart, and also some people have done the secondary sale of their equity, so that they are able to get in the return. So that those are the success stories that has triggered this mentality that, okay, many people are saying, okay, I can see a return from investing. So that's when you see a lot of these platforms like angel investing platforms that are coming up right now. So what is happening is that you also are able to bring in the capital from normal people also, like people who are in corporate and they never thought they can actually come and invest, like say 5 lakh rupees, 10 lakh rupees, 15 lakh rupees, right? So that is something that was not reachable before by anybody, but now they can also come and invest. And people who have that kind of expertise, they can also bring into that table. But a few pitfalls I see, right? So what is happening is that the quality of the startups is slowly increasing, definitely, but I think it needs to still go up by many notches. It has to do with a lot of things. Starting with like, okay, how is the user experience? Okay, for example, if it's a tech product, how exactly is user experience? How is that? How easy you can make the business model? How you can look at a situation and then question the status quo and do the same. Solve a problem in a different way. So if you look at what is happening, one of the key problems that people have done is that they just copy the West. That's where they go wrong in many aspects, because any concept that happens in the West, usually they copy it here. That's what they try to do. And like what Vivek was telling, that Ola did their own innovation. If that innovation is missing, then it's gonna fail, right? So those are the kind of things that's gonna happen. In my own personal opinion, right? So I started a company called jobbyhive.com, me and a couple of guys, and then we were doing damn good. If you really look at it, this was in 2007. We started. We had a lot of traction on the internet. We had like lakhs of users, millions of hits. But in 2 years, we had to shut down the company. We went completely broke. And I was like thinking, okay, what went wrong? So when I really realized it, I had not focused on monetization at all. All I wanted was traction. And then what guided me was, YouTube has a $1 billion valuation and zero revenue, right? So all these, Silicon Valley startups from San Francisco, that is the kind of a culture they have, because they have that kind of a valuation game. And then we tried to do the same, but we couldn't raise the money at the right time.
Yeah.
And then we had to shut down. But what I want to tell here also, because as an as I'm telling about this, that I shut down this company, one key thing happened is that while I thought that I was a complete failure, I thought that I'm not going to come back in the race, because I thought that in 2-3 years, rest of the my friends and everybody had already started taking bigger jobs. They were getting better salaries, and I thought that I'm just a loser sitting at home. But luckily, maybe it's not just luck, but I got a call from a Canadian company, MNC, and they told me that they want to hire me as a CEO for their company, because they wanted to start their division in India and business in India. And I thought it is a prank call. I thought somebody is joking. I told them, I think you don't know what happened to me. If you know that, right? The press will write about you only when you're raising funds or you're shutting down. Okay. Otherwise, usually they don't write about you. So people are writing about me. So I told them, why don't you just Google? You will know that I just shut down my company. So why you want to hire me? They told me that we want to hire you because the technology they used, it's really valuable for us. The way you scaled up your startup on internet, millions of hits, that is useful to us. And then one day I was practically broke, and the next day I'm CEO of a multinational company, right? So I was like, what happened here? I was like, what really happened here? So that day I realized that there's no concept called failure in life, and especially in entrepreneurship. That's exactly what I want to tell all the students out there, that these failures are not failures. They are stepping stones. If you really introspect, you really are able to understand what mistakes you made and then correct them. If you make the mistakes again, you're doomed. So right. So that's important, right? So that's how this turnaround happened, and I think that's why it's important for us to create a culture where it's okay to fail, but it's not okay to not experiment. It's not okay to just sit down and not innovate. So that's important.
I think both of you have just given the complete SAR of what a student entrepreneur should be looking at. Vivek talking about investor and mentor's role, and you taking it further ahead. And I actually, that was going to be my next question, that how about handling failure? And you put it the right way. They are the stepping stones, and they say you fail early and restart and relook into your business plan, and then tweak it out, completely scrap it. And early you do it, the buffer which Vivek was talking about, 20 years, that buffer is a big time which young student entrepreneurs can leverage. It is like the compounding effect that called in mutual funds. It's something like that. But yeah, so I completely agree with the failure and stepping stone part of the journey of an entrepreneur. And I think in a way it is also a journey of an investor, because not all your investments are going to pay you back the way they do in one or two companies. So it is a learning for both a startup who is doing this and even the investor who are reinvesting or taking chances in investing in these startups. Vivek, on this, how does an investor, I'm digressing a little from what we were talking, but since the topic is there, as an investor, when you're looking at a startup, what is the first thing which you look at, which excites you?
So, I think this was actually covered by Vishwas in one part, which probably he did not highlight. But as a startup, are you solving a problem? So is that problem genuinely a problem? So I give this example here and there, and I heard it from somewhere, but I think it's a phenomenal example. I'm standing with my valet ticket outside a hotel, and the car comes after 10 minutes. So if I can create a solution that my car comes in 3 minutes, is that really exciting for an investor to invest in? As an investor, I would say no. You're genuinely solving a problem. You're saving my 7 minutes. You're helping me get the car early. But is that really a problem that some investor would be excited? But at the same time, if you're waiting for a taxi, and then when the taxi arrives, you have to haggle for the price and fare. And then after haggling also, if he goes by the meter, you don't know if he's taking the right route or not. That's genuinely a problem if I'm able to solve. And obviously, out of the two problems, one has been completely solved by Olas and Ubers and other companies of the world. And the other problem still persist to exist. So you have to, ensure that the problem really exists and you are solving it. So after I've seen that the problem is very interesting and it's something worth solving, is the team behind it really motivated? So the team has to have that conviction that we have this solution and we will be able to execute this come whatsoever. So people like Oyos of the world, Ritesh Agarwal, by the way, Ritesh came to GSCA a few years ago. He was runners up at the same competition, EO GSCA, that we're talking about. He was runners up, and then we know his story now. So he was genuinely, up to that कि मुझे तो problem solve करना है, and I believe this is a problem. चाहे खुद जाकर के होटल का रूम क्लीन करना हो, बेडशीट लगाना हो, वहां पर छोटा सा एक फेस वॉश रखना हो, एक क्रीम रखना हो, एक कोम रखना हो. That's what he did. When he did, he ensured that this is how I want it to look, and the problem is being solved. When he genuinely solved it, it was replicable, it was easily scalable. So next point that comes is it scalable? If you can solve a problem, but is it scalable or not? And is there enough addressable market for it? So once Vishwas was talking about, there are a lot of things that you're giving for free, like YouTubes of the world or the Googles of the world, but all of them had a revenue model in mind at some stage. I'm sure they did not think that we will only give it for free and that's it. Be it Facebook or Instagram, all these people had revenue model, and that's why they're able to they're able to be highly successful, because ultimately money counts. Ultimately the value of money is very important. What you do or how you do is later, but you have to realize if there is a big market for it, is it profitable, is there unit economics, will I be able to give it exit to the investors? You have to keep that in mind, because if the investor knows there is no exit, I barely think anyone would invest except their CSR fund into it. So it's very important from an investor's point of view. You have to know how your exit is going to happen. And there aren't too many options. Either it could be a buyout, or it could be a takeover, or it could be a IPO, and that's it. I mean, you can't have multiple options, but these are the only options that you have. So even when you fail, a lot of times I've seen teams, when they fail, their idea does not work, but they're actually acquired by a big player. I've been part of 2 startups. One was acquired by Paytm, one was acquired by Snapdeal. So ultimately their idea they did not replicate, but the model or the software they built, they loved the software, they loved the team. They just acquired the startup only for those 2 reasons, and not for the idea they were actually executing. So sometimes it is a USP, or in fact, I would say all the time it is USP if you have a great team, because when it's a great team, they're very agile, they're very nimble. They can take the situation, or if the problem is, they can swiftly handle it instead of being rigid and being adamant of what, if I want to do this is the only thing I will do, or I will not do. So it is very important to have that agile team, and a very motivated team. I would say that.
Very, very rightly said, Vivek. One question which in the previous Facebook Live we had, and I think from where you're coming, that to have an agile team, but what struggle point with students, entrepreneurs, is that they don't have the tools, all kind of tools. They might have the idea, they might have the execution plan, but they might not have the software skills. Or they might have the software skills and may need some prototyping. For that they don't have that facilities or reach. So the question what came was that, how does one, if has the idea and needs to design the software or get the backend or technology of it, how does one go ahead with that? What kind of data security or confidentiality is there that the idea will not get copied? So Vishwas, you are in that domain also, since you do a lot of tech coding for companies. How does a startup get the confidence or the trust when it is approaching a software company to build its software? What is the dynamics which you guys work in?
Yeah, so fortunately, we have been working with a lot of top companies across the world, and also a lot of startups. We help them go to market. That's what we do. And some of them come up with just ideas, one-liner ideas. And some of them, of course, have a very, very thorough idea about what they want to do and stuff. But when somebody has an idea, it's the first thing that we push them to do is create a prototype. Okay, so this is like the first thing that we do is like a lean startup philosophy, right? Creating an MVP, right? Minimum viable product. So that is the first thing that you need to do. So it's a thing, right? So if you want to create like a software, you cannot build like 20, 30 features and then you end up putting a lot of money in all of that. And by the time you do it, you realize that the market itself is gone, right? There's no need at all. So rather than that, you figure out what are those 2 or 3 key things, and then you do it really well. And then once you validate that, say, okay, these are the things that are working, and then you iterate over it and you keep moving forward. So that is a lean startup philosophy. That's where that is a thing that we do. And when somebody approaches us, the first thing that we do is sign up an NDA. And these are something that companies who are professional, they take it very, very seriously, because otherwise, nobody's going to work with you, right? So that is taken care of. And then we sign what we call as an IP clause. So what that says is that basically we are doing work for hire. So suppose a company approaches us, a startup, whatever we do, we will give the rights to them perpetually for whatever it is, like all the IP will belong to them. So that is called work for hire. So I think these 2-3 terms are critical for any startup to sign before they start the work. They can do that. And I think what is important is, first step, they need to get their design right. So what happens is this, right? Traditionally, if you look at it, software was built from a functionality first approach. That means people came and told, okay, I need this software. It's like an accounting software, whatever. And then these are the 10 features. And it was given to the engineering team. And then the engineering team started building it, and then design was a afterthought. They said like, okay, guys, how do the screen supposed to come? And then engineers will decide something, and somebody will come and they'll do something. So that's when you see a lot of old, the corporate, the B2B kind of software is very bad, poorly designed. That's when they failed. But the right way of doing it is what we call it as a user-centric approach. So what is a user-centric approach? Is basically you first identify who are your primary, secondary, tertiary audience. Once you understand who are your audience, you basically understand what are their demography, geography, their habits, their spending power. You basically create like a persona, and then you keep them in the center, and then you build journeys around them. Okay, so that is what is the first step of creating a user experience. That is a design first approach or a user-centric approach. And then once you create that, what happens is you create something called an information architecture, where you understand what is the length and breadth of the data that you want to take from somebody or use in your software or a system, and what is the hierarchy of that. For example, when you log into your first page, what is more important? Is it selling of something is important, or you want them to do some action that is important? So that kind of a user experience, nail that first. My thing is, if you don't get that right first, it doesn't matter at all. So many of the Indian startups failed because they didn't focus on user experience. So I think that is something that getting a good design team who understands this is important. And then after that, of course, you can showcase that to investors, get feedback. So there are many prototyping tools these days that will help you to do that very quickly. Like within a month, you can actually create those kind of prototypes, right? And then I think you can go into building tech after that. So I think that should be the way of doing it.
Very, very interesting and important points I think you made for any student entrepreneur who's there with the idea and does not have the software part or the technology skills. The market is open. You can reach out to companies like Vishwas's or maybe others but just keep in mind the IPR clause and the NDA are very important when you do such activities to address the rights on your idea so that the idea doesn't get copied or stolen from your side. So I think we got a semi mentoring session from both of you guys. Vishwas also adding to that how a software is designed and what you need to keep in mind when you're designing the product, keeping the consumer as they say customer is God. So even for software design or your startup idea, product design, I think you have to keep your primary, secondary, and tertiary customers in mind before you go ahead with the whole idea. So I think it has been a great learning for me also as a entrepreneur. I think some ideas I can take back to my business and think what my customers are looking for. And I think we will probably meet physically soon after some time and probably get more thoughts from both of you for student entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs in general, and hoping to catch up soon with you guys. I would like to close the session with a formal thanks to both of you to taking out 45 minutes or almost an hour on a Saturday evening and spending it with student entrepreneurs and giving them, I think, a right way of looking at entrepreneurship and be open to fail and learn quickly and get back to our entrepreneurship journey, because we need successful entrepreneurs for this country. And GACA, the flagship event of EO, again, whoever has not signed up for it, please go ahead on gaca.org and apply for EO Jaipur's event. And we are having this on 5th of December, and the applications are closing on 9th of November. So there is very less time. And again, thank you, both of you. It was nice seeing you after long, and take care, and we'll meet shortly. Yeah. Thank you,
Yeah.
guys.
Thanks, Abhinav. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
hosting.
Thank you.
Thanks, Abhinav. Bye.